I superbly performed descent into a nightmarish chapter in the history of American capitalism. Anupama Chopra, a film companion. That's right, folks. It's Killers of the Flower Moon. I'm positively giddy today. I don't even know how I'm going to do this review, but we're going to get it done. Somehow, some way, I got into the critics screening of Killers of the Flower Moon last Thursday in New York City, and now we have an exclusive review. Cody, this is the way a true film critic operates. You and I know this. You're supposed to see the movie at a critic screening, and then the movie opens Friday, and you write your review back the day, maybe Miami Herald. You'd have like a movie review Friday morning, blah, blah, blah. The way we could do it, because I'm not like a real critic, the movie opens Friday. I see it Friday, Saturday, Sunday. We tape it Monday, release it Tuesday. But this time, I actually feel like a critic. So this is interesting for me, first and foremost, because I've written my review as if I was a critic. And I keep thinking to myself, I want everyone to listen to this podcast. Cody's going to work some magic, get this in the main feed. But I don't want to ruin it for anybody. So I've written my review, which we're going to do in a second. And I followed the Tybur model. First third, you can discuss the plot. Second third, Last third, you can't tell anything. So at any point, if you feel like I'm saying too much, throw in a spoiler alert.
Now, before we get into the review, I need you to paint the picture because you were super eager to get some access here. How did you get the news? Was there a fist bump? I have you yelping? Woo! Woo! Like, what was the literal reaction to finding out you're going to attend a screener?
Yeah, I'm with you on the yelping. There's definitely some like definitely some high pitched screeching. Definitely yelping.
You hug
involved.
Harold Reynolds because you're like recording. You happen to be doing baseball stuff, so you're like, Harold, I got in, and he's like, I don't care. Right,
he has no idea, could not care less. He's like, shoot, have you seen this Nathan Eovaldi tape? I'm like, yeah, whatever you say, buddy. I love Nathan Eovaldi. Is he has a role in this movie? So I find out I'm in, and I think I'd emailed them last Friday, and then Tuesday late night, they're like, here's the screenings. And it was like a Monday night, and I was like, no, I have to work. I'm like, would I call in sick? I'm like, no, I couldn't in good conscience. It's playoffs right now. I've never called in sick under false pretenses. Not in America. I did once in Canada, which was when I first had my ESPN audition. It was literally, we were doing like rehearsals for a new show. And I'd asked them, it was Canadian Thanksgiving, which just passed. And I said, can I just have the Monday off? And they're like, no. And I go, okay. It's the only time I've ever called in sick under false pretenses because ESPN had given me just like an informal meeting. And so I was like, oh, and somebody told me, if you ever want to call in sick under false pretenses, say you threw your back out. So I threw my back out, drove 9 hours to Bristol, met Laurie Orlando, and now Dave Roberts, who now runs. Yeah, throw your back out. If ever you want to get Dan, he'll have no idea. And then I drove back. Anyways, this time I was like, no, I can't call in sick. I could never do that to MLB Network. Let's work at another time. So Thursday, they go 10 a.m. or 5 p.m. I go, oh my God, okay. I think I can do the 5 p.m. I thought at 10 a.m. I go get the kids to school, but as you know, no car right now. I had to check the bus schedule. So this is where the situation got very delicate. 5 p.m. movie, which is in Broadway, Times Square. 1515 Broadway to be specific, Paramount screening room. 4 boys, as you know. Eldest guy's got cross country till 5. My other son 4:15. So my little guy gets him on the bus 3:05. I got to pick up my other boy Shaz 3:05. So I tell my wife, I'm like, all right, you stay home. You got Maz on the bus. I'll pick up Shaz. Pick him up 3:04. Come home 5 minutes. 3:09. Give him a hug and a kiss. I'm like, I gotta go. He's like, what? I go. I'm going to see a movie. The walk to the bus stop is 12 minutes. So if I leave at 3:10, I'm not going to make it on the bus. The bus was at 3:17, which I'd 3:19. Excuse me, 3:19. Literally minutes here. And you know what it's like. You're hugging your daughter. You don't want to say goodbye. She's like, Dad, I don't understand. I'm like, can I tell you about my day? I'm like, we had 5 minutes. We're going to have a lot more time tomorrow. I got to run. I love you, buddy. So I'm wearing my Martin Scorsese Marvel sweatshirt, perspiring a little bit, getting the jog on, slightly strained hamstring from tennis. So we're not really running all the way. So we're like, this could be a little embarrassing if someone sees me right now.
Fighting through.
Yeah. Is that a lame-legged Adnan Burke getting to a bus stop? But I got there 3:17. Bus at 3:19. Girl soon there also went, like, oh, you made it. I'm like, oh my God, yeah. Just don't tell anybody how much I'm perspiring. Bus comes 3:21. So 2 minutes late, made it with 4 minutes to spare. Thought then hit while I'm on the bus. Like, imagine if there's an accident. Like, imagine Lincoln Tunnel shut down. Like imagine I'm on a bus as this happens. Thankfully, crisis averted. 43-minute bus ride. Most important thing is what? Use the bathroom. Yeah. Empty your bladder at Port Authority. Take care of business. 4:30. Check the phone. 10-minute walk. Bam. 4:40, walk up, security guard. Love your sweatshirt. Thank you. I go see one of the guys who was on the thread. Jeremy's like, you made it. I'm like, buddy, you don't understand. I might hug you. I don't even know you. Thank you so much for the screening. Before I walk in, I go, can I use your bathroom? He's like, yeah. I had just gone to the bathroom. I'm like, 3.5 hour movie. I'm like, I go back to the bathroom. This is 4:45. I go in. I'm like, this is like, and then like, I'm about to like heart's just pounding. I'm like, this is like such an incredible experience. 4 years I've been waiting for a Scorsese movie, and he's 80 years old. Like, how many more of these am I going to get, Cody? Like this. This is it. You have to bottle this emotion right now.
I thought you had to use the restroom, and that's why you were having these things. No, you're just excited for the movie. Okay.
You love this aspect, though. It's now 4:55, and I go, maybe one more bathroom break, just in case.
God.
And even the guy's kind of like, I'm like, he looks at me and I'm like, one more. He's like, okay. I'm like 3.5. I don't want to have any sort of urine in my bladder. I want to just be completely focused. He's like, yep. Couple dribbles later, we go back. Guy sits down,
squeeze it out.
Yeah. Guy looks at me and goes, Adnan. I'm like, yeah, how you doing, man? He's like, good. He's like, oh, I'm a huge fan. I'm like, thanks. Eric from Bro Bible. I don't know if you would probably do this like me. He goes, Eric, bro, like gives it like a, you know what it is kind of thing. And I'm like, yeah. And I'm like, no idea. I'm like, yeah, Bro Bible. That doesn't sound like something I'd follow. But I'm like, I read all your stuff. And he's like, oh, you here for work? And I'm like, yeah, I do a podcast called CINEPHILE. He's like, no, I know. I'm like, but if you know who I was, wouldn't you know that I do CINEPHILE? Like maybe it was a little bit confusing, but I'm like, yeah, I'm reviewing the movie. He's like, yeah. So we chat a few minutes. He's from Hoboken, nice guy. I'm like, all right, let's do this. And I love the fact he has a notebook.
How did he get in?
Great question. Yeah. And I look at my guy. I love the fact you have a notebook. I'm looking around. I go, most critics now, I feel like we just watch it. And, you remember it, whatever your kids go. Because he made a funny joke. He's like, no, I had a brand new notebook. Are you kidding? 3.5 hours. I need all these pages. I'm like, yeah. So it was funny. The only thing, it never took me out of the movie.
The dark theater, it's like, right?
Yeah, exactly. I've done it before. Trust me. I nerded out when I was your age, like 35, 36. I'm going to be a real film critic. I'm going to take a notebook. And I'm like, dark theater, you don't even know what you're writing. You're just scribbling nonsense. You can't, like, after you're like, oh, man, I look really important, but I don't know what the hell I wrote. So a few times I would notice, like I would laugh at something. I'm like, oh, he's scribbling that one down. I'm like, oh, interesting when I get this joke. Anyways, movie begins. I go, I wish I could bottle this emotion. Like, granted, I don't do drugs, but I'm like, this must be like, if you're a real drug addict, this must be like what heroin's like. This is like once phone goes off, dim the lights.
Oh,
Paramount Pictures.
Is it goosebumps when the lights go down?
Absolutely, goosebumps. And I'm like, and all I'm telling myself is never forget this feeling. Like this is it. Like this is what it's like. Lights fade up. Paramount Pictures. And away we go. I'm now going to read my review because I'm just too emotional.
This is where I'll lay out. Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. Go ahead. Come make some notes go ahead. Make notes while that guy was.
I'll turn all the lights off in here and take notes on your review.
Here we go. Martin Scorsese's Killers of the Flower Moon opens with a ritual of the Osage. So many of Scorsese's movies are ritualistic. Think of Charlie putting his hand above the flame in Mean Streets, Travis mired in loneliness driving his cab and frequenting adult movie theaters, Jake LaMotta in a repeated cycle of training and eating and battering everything in its way. And in the rituals in his religious films like Jesus in Last Temptation of Christ, The Monks of Kundun, and The Priests of Silence. Here, a shot Marty loves employing and also used in silence, an eyeball peeking through, observing what's happening, like Ray Liotta's childhood character in Goodfellas, observing the wise guys of the street. The ritual ends and the members of the Osage go outside only to see a geyser erupt, and the music from longtime Scorsese collaborator, the late Robbie Robertson, swells. Eureka! They've struck gold. Then the story begins, an old school newsreel, as if Marty's paying homage to titles from a Charlie Chaplin or Buster Keaton movie. The Osage became the richest people in America per capita, thanks to the ocean of oil underneath their feet, to quote Daniel Plainview in P.T. Anderson's masterpiece, There Will Be Blood. That title is apropos here as well, because all these rich Osage will not be able to enjoy their riches forever. So how exactly will it be plundered from them? Leonardo DiCaprio's Ernest arrives by train. Scorsese grew up a devotee of Westerns. John Ford's The Searchers, for example, directly informs the ending of Taxi Driver and Let's Go Home, Jenny. You can feel his enthusiasm watching the opening of the picture and those great, wide, expansive shots as the director seems as wide-eyed at the potential of his first Western as Ernest is at seeing the potential exploration of this newfound territory. He goes to meet his uncle, who he calls King, played by the indomitable Robert De Niro. This marks DiCaprio's 6th collaboration with Scorsese and Bob's 10th collaboration with Marty, and second back-to-back after an extended absence. Marty's longtime editor, Thelma Schoonmaker, who's cut all of Scorsese's films since 1980's Raging Bull, has called this De Niro's finest performance, and perhaps Bob is due for a late-career Oscar. As King, the actor finds a different approach yet again. Silver hair swept back and period piece circular glasses that give him an avuncular look. This uncle is truly avuncular, as he asks Ernest, what kind of women you like? White ones? What about red ones? The Osage have a lot of money with them. And Ernest makes it clear with his sideways grin and grimy visage, hell, I do love that money. Soon he's driving Molly Burkhart, played by Lily Gladstone, who's nothing short of a revelation. Their relationship forms the crux of the movie. In a moment which was ad-libbed, she mutters something in Osage, and without missing a beat, Leo responds, that must mean handsome and Injun. Staying in character, she laughs and they continue on the ride. Later at her home, when she tells him to stay quiet during a rainstorm, she makes it plain to him. She knows he wants to be with her for her money. And he doesn't bat an eye, saying he sure does love that money. Later, she's with her sister, and she also tells him bluntly Ernest is money hungry, and Lily doesn't dissuade the notion and says he sure is handsome. Later, Ernest seeks the advice of King if he should marry Lily, and once Uncle gives his blessing, the plan has been hatched. In Scorsese's world, there isn't one mastermind complicit, but an entire community. And after showcasing the love and rituals of the Osage, as they start to be murdered, our emotional investment rises considerably. Who isn't responsible? Is King a man of benevolence, a crafty benevolent, or incarnation of evil? Is Ernest a lover, not a fighter, and too ignorant to understand what's happening, or is he that worst kind of person, a wolf in sheep's clothing? David Ehrlich, the critic of IndieWire, has called this the best performance of Leonardo DiCaprio's career, and it's easy to see why. As you can see, all of DiCaprio is tortured as ever. And there's the ever-expressive Gladstone, who Spike Lee says should win an Academy Award, suffering through diabetes and seeing the slow, painful dissolution of her society. The capable supporting cast features two longtime actors working with Scorsese for the first time. Academy Award winner Brendan Fraser for The Whale, and John Lithgow playing opposing lawyers. And there's also Sally Buggs from The Irishman showing up in a memorable cameo. Scorsese's directorial style is less busy and frenetic than the days of Michael Ballhaus' ever-present roaming camera in Goodfellas. Here, rather than elaborate tracking shots, Marty is content to have extended takes of over-the-shoulder shots, which means when he wants to ante up the dazzle with a Dante's Inferno sequence, as David Grand mentioned, or breaking of the fourth wall, or an extraordinary bit of acting from DiCaprio, which exists of an uninterrupted medium shot, the effect is overwhelming. The aforementioned score, drum beats with dread. Jack Fisk nails the period production detail. Rodrigo Prieto's peerless cinematography, and Ellen Lewis's casting gives a face to so many Osage actors who haven't been seen before. Scorsese and co-screenwriter Eric Ross spent 2 years completely rewriting the script when Leo expressed interest in playing Ernest rather than the straight-arrow FBI agent played by Jesse Plemons. As Marty said, he was worried about telling yet another white savior tale. Instead, with the cooperation and investment of the Osage community, it's a story of withering betrayal and cataclysmic sadness. Killers of the Flower Moon is an everlasting elegy and another Marty masterpiece from the world's greatest living director. A month shy of turning 81, he proves he's capable of giving us nothing short of the best picture of the year and a timeless tale that will result in double-digit Oscar nominations. There's moments of triumph and humor, but ultimately, this is a bleak American tragedy, shattering in its depiction of evil and the corrosive nature of the human heart.
Goosebumps. Give me something negative. Tell me one negative sentence about it.
But yeah, the question really is like, what would have it had to take for me to not call
seriously,
it the best picture?
That's what I want to know. But seriously, you have nothing. Like, is there anything, any critiques?
I tell you, man, I as soon as it's over, it's 3 and a hook. Like, it's 3.5 hours on the dot. I turn my phone on and I see like 12 messages and it's like, how about that Trey Turner hit? I'm like, no, I don't care right now. That's really not my focus. And I kind of had to catch my breath. I kind of want to talk to Buddy there from the Bro Bible. He dipped right away. He gets up like, I guess I kind of want to have a conversation with him, but it's such
you just wanted to be like, hey, can we just go and talk about this? Like me and you? Can we just...
Yeah, exactly. You're taking the train? I got to take the bus back home. Trust me. I had a $21 bus ride. I'll walk with you. But as I went, thankfully, to the bathroom right away, I looked at the guy next, thankfully not the urinal. And I was just like, man, that's heavy. He's like, yeah. And then we discussed a couple of scenes. I'm like, I just feel so grateful I get to see it. He's like, yeah, I feel the same way. And then I walk out and you go back into society. Many would argue the worst of society, which is Times Square and everyone hustling and bustling. I'm like, I can't do this right now. I don't want to go to a bus. I don't want to be surrounded by people dressed as Iron Man. I'm going to go to a sports bar. I first got a veggie cheese slice. It was like $6.33. Like, let me just, let me through all these text messages, think about the movie, watch a bit of the Phillies game, took the bus home. But I was just like, oh my God, man, I can't wait to see it again. Like, when you see a great film, I was like, okay, that's one down. Now I can't wait to see it again. And like, because you're watching it the first time, you're just watching the story unfold. What's going to happen? Now, when I watch it the second time, I'll watch it from a critical eye, looking for certain scenes. But I can't wait to people to see it. And
are you still going to bring your wife?
Also, excellent question. So I went back and then I said to her this week, I'm like, hey, Thursday night, I was trying to reschedule the kids swimming. She has her cousin coming Friday into town for a couple of days. So I'm like, did you still want me to get the sitter? And she's like, no, I'll just cancel the sitter. I'm like, are you sure? She's like, yeah. I'm like, okay. I'm like, don't ask me twice because like that guy. So now what I'm going to do is basically she's saying, she's prioritizing the fact her cousin's coming, which is totally fine. She wants to get the house ready. But now I'm like, Friday, once I get the kids to school, I'm going to go see a 9 a.m. screening, knock that out for 3.5 hours. And then I'll be on the road at the World Series. Could be Rangers, Phillies. I'm like, man, if I got I don't know, I wouldn't have a day off. I'd be traveling. But my show is me and Harold are doing the pregame. So If I got a 10 a.m. showing in Philadelphia, might be cracking out a Killers of the Flower Moon screening.
What
How about this Bryce Harper? Yeah.
What's the most you've ever seen one movie in a theater?
It'd be The Irishman, which I saw 3 times in the theater. So that was New York Film Critics screening, which was, Scorsese, De Niro, Pacino, Pesci. And then I took my wife the next year, maybe it was the day after. And then one of my buddies, close friends from Kingston, was visiting like a month later. He's like, I haven't seen The Irishman. I go, let's go do it. So 3 is the most I've ever done.
And you'll do this one 3, we think.
Yeah, I think so. It's got to be. I mean, it's minimum 2. It just wouldn't be me if it wasn't 3. Well, so you do it 1 is the better question.
I want to see it. I mean, I wanted to review it on here, but you got it ahead of time. But I am going to go see it.
All right. We have as well a couple of members of the team, which is fantastic. So again, I can't thank Mason and Jeremy and the rest of the crew here from 42 West. These guys were awesome because, I mean, they did see when I walked in with the sweatshirt that I go, listen, I'm locked in. So afterwards I said, it's the best movie of the year. What can we do here? I'm willing to give up a kidney for 5 minutes of Marty. They go, we're not going to get to Scorsese, unfortunately. Did Time Magazine. He's not going to do CINEPHILE. But I did get the invite to the webinar. So 30 minutes of Marty talking to all of us on the global stage. And they were kind of sent along some clips of that. So take a listen. Here's Martin Scorsese talking about Killers of the Flower Moon.
Welcome to the global press conference for Killers of the Flower Moon. And we are extraordinarily lucky and honored to have with us here today a man who really does not need presentation, as he's one of the greatest filmmakers of all time, who has co-written, directed, and produced what, in my opinion, is a masterpiece. Personally, it blew me away. I was not that familiar with the story, and now I can't stop thinking about it and the movie. Congratulations once more.
Thank you so much.
First question is, you formed a 20-year partnership with Leo DiCaprio and a 50-year partnership with Robert De Niro. Why have you returned to them both so often over the years? And what has stood out to you most about their work on Killers of the Flower Moon?
Well, in the case of Robert De Niro, we were teenagers together, and he's the only one who really knows where I come from, people I knew, and that sort of thing. Some of them are still alive. He knows them. I know his friends, his old friends. And we had a real testing ground in the 70s where we tried everything, and we found that, we trusted each other. It's all about trust and love. It's what it is. And that's a big deal because very often if an actor has a lot of power, and he had a lot of power at that time, an actor could take over your picture. Studio gets angry with you. The actor comes in and takes it over. With him, I never felt that. There was a freedom. There was experimenting, and also not afraid of anything. I wasn't afraid to do something. I just did it. And years later, he told me he worked with this kid, Leo DiCaprio, and little boy in this boy's life. And he said, you should work with this kid sometime. But he didn't. It was just casual. But with him, something like that, a recommendation at that time, I think in the early 90s, is not casual. He says it casually, but he rarely said that, rarely tell me. He rarely gave recommendations. And so years go by, and I'm presented with Leo with Gangs in New York, and we worked together in Gangs. He made Gangs possible, actually. He loved the pictures I made, and he wanted to explore the same territory. And so we developed more of a relationship when we did The Aviator. And there was a kind of, towards the end of it, there was a kind of something happening, a maturity with him. I'm not quite sure, but we really clicked in certain scenes. And that led to Departed. And then that became much closer. That was a project where Bill Monahan, him, me, other people, we were writing all the time and recreating that character that he played of Billy. And so during that time, he really found out that even though it's 30 years difference, he has similar sensibilities. He likes pretty much, he'll come to me and he'll say, listen to this record. It's Louis Jordan and Ella Fitzgerald. I grew up with it. He's not bringing me anything new, but he likes it. I said, that's interesting. Why is he bringing it? He'll call me and say, I had a cold, and I was looking at Criterion films, and I wanted to catch up on some of these classics, and I saw this incredible movie. It's incredible. It's a Japanese picture. It's called Tokyo Story. Did you ever see it? I said, this was last year. I said, yeah. I mean, it took me a few years to catch up. I couldn't even understand the Ozu style, seeing it for the first time in the early 70s, because we're used to Orson Welles cameras, And this guy got it from watching it on a big screen and TV. And that's very interesting to me, to be open that way to older parts of our culture, newer parts of our culture, of course, and the curiosity that he has about other people and other cultures. And there's a trust. There's a trust. And even if we can't get it right away, we know we'll come up with something. Maybe other people have relationships where they come up with it faster. Well, we don't. We just work it through. For example, the scene between Leo and Bob in the jail at the end. That scene ultimately was finally written, I think, a few days before we shot it. Working with the two of them and working with Marianne and everybody, because we had said so much and it could have gone so many different ways. But what does the picture really need? How much more is there for them to say to each other after all that's happened? And so we went that way. It's really, it's trust, particularly doing Wolf of Wall Street, by the way. He came up with wonderful stuff that was outrageous. And so I pushed him, he pushed me, then I pushed him more than he pushed me. And we suddenly, everything was wild. And it's really quite something. But, and he had a good energy too on the set. That was also important. Very important, because in the mornings I'm not really good and I get on set and then I'd see him or Jonah Hill or him and Margot Robbie or him and Lily, and suddenly they're all like, hey. I said, okay, let's work.
You mentioned music a moment ago. Your films have a musicality through your framing, camera movements, sound, silences, where you choose to cut shots. What informs the rhythm of your work, and what music were you hearing in the making and execution of this film?
Well, yeah, the way I like to make pictures, for the most part, I've learned, or not intentionally, but I feel it, is like the pacing of music. The boxing scenes in Raging Bull are like the ballet scene in The Red Shoes, where everything is seen and felt from inside the ring, inside the fighter's head, the way everything is felt and seen inside the dancer's head, Maura Scherer's in Red Shoes. So the covering of the band singing The Weight in The Last Waltz, doing in a studio, was very much according to the music, to the different bars of music and how a camera would move, etc. So, and sometimes I play the music back on the set. In the case of Goodfellas, a number of times, the end of Layla, for example, was played back as we were doing the camera moves. And so for me, ultimately, a movie is more like, I'm trying to get to like a movie being a piece of music. Is what I think I've been trying. That's why I do think these music films at the same time. I'm trying to get to the pacing and rhythm of something that can be played. For example, I don't know, you play a symphony and you live with it. How many times? Oh, I heard the Beethoven Seventh. I don't want to hear it again. No, you play it. Well, I like the third movement. I want to hear the second movement again. No, I mean, you live with it. You live with it. Or Baroque music, anything by Bach. So, or Philip Glass, let's say. And so in a case like this, very often I leave, if the film is playing on TCM, let's say, I take the sound off and I just watch. It's living with me. I live with it. And if it's a Hitchcock or it's a Ford or, a newer one, whatever, I'm looking and I can tell there's a musical rhythm to the pacing of the camera, the edit. What I mean by the camera is the size of the people in the frame, the editing, and camera movement. I could feel it. And so that's the way that's how I exist in a sense. So for me, it's really, really about getting the pace of music. And that's done very, very carefully on set, but also even more carefully in the editing. That's why this picture is more like, somebody pointed out recently, like a bolero, where it starts slower and moves slowly and in circles, and then suddenly gets more intense and suddenly goes more and more until it explodes that way. And so I felt it. I couldn't verbalize it the way I am now, but I felt it in the shoot and in the edit. And a lot of the music that kept pushing me was what Robbie Robertson had put together, particularly that bass note that he was playing when Ernest drops her off for the first time at her house, Molly's house. She looks at him, she turns, and all of a sudden you hear boom, 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 boom. I said I wanted something dangerous and fleshy and sexy, but dangerous. And that beat took us all the way through. Then I added, like, he sent me some him, and I picked up music from Harry Smith's Anthology of Folk Music, all this sort of thing. One particular piece called The Indian War Whoop by Hoyt Ming and his Pep Steppers was very, very important. Bulldoze Blues by Henry Thomas, which became Going Up the Country by Canned Heat. All of this. And then, Dark as the Night, and Blind Willie Johnson with The Flames. C.C. Ryder, Ma Rainey, and of course Emmett Miller singing Lovesick Blues, which became the great Lovesick Blues by Hank Williams later on. But this was the first. So it's in, all that's in there, but the drive of the movie is what Robbie put down, and we pulled it through that way.
All right. Now, as promised, a couple of big-time guests. We have Jack Fisk, who is the production designer of Killers of the Flower Moon. He's had an amazing career, which I'm going to dive into with him, particularly his work on this film, and also casting director Ellen Lewis. How cool is that? A casting director. How do you cast these kinds of movies? And by the way, she's also cast Goodfellas, Casino, The Departed, Wolf of Wall Street, and The Irishman. So she's worked with Marty for years. I cannot wait for both of these interviews. I hope you enjoy them as much as I did. As promised, Killers of the Flower Moon is the best picture of the year, and what a tribute not only to Martin Scorsese and all his collaborators, one of whom a pleasure to talk to now on CINEPHILE. His name is Jack Fisk. He is the legendary production designer who worked on this film. Jack, it's so great to see you. Congratulations on such an achievement.
Thank you. It was nothing but fun to do. A challenge.
So first thing, I know I think it's really instructive for our listeners to go, okay, production designer. I get the basic essence. They're obviously putting together the look of the movie and grabbing all the materials, but you just start with a mood board? Like, what's on the mood board? Let's start there.
Well, I don't really start with mood boards. I start with character. And in this film, the character I was concerned about most was Molly. So I needed to figure out where she lived. And none of us knew exactly. The history books didn't have pictures of her house, and not that much was written about her until David Grann wrote his beautiful book. So my first research when I came on the film was to find out how Molly and her family were living in 1919, and then to figure out how the town was set up and what the main income to the town was, and what kind of people and shops were there. So that research compiled literally for months. Because of COVID, I had extra time to do the research. And based on that research, I started to design the film, design her house based on other Osage homes at the time. And the colors, that you normally put in the mood board, I was investigating real locations and finding out what color was this originally. I was looking behind light switches and under moldings and peeling wallpaper back and seeing what was under that. So it was purely investigative, because I figured if I knew the way it really was, then we could alter it if it made the story better, but at least we had a starting point.
And from there, you end up building this entire area. So did you guys literally build the sets? Was it on Osage land? Is it in Oklahoma? Did you have permission? I know you worked with the community. How did that develop?
We worked with the Osage community. Some of the land that we built on, Molly's house and stuff, was privately owned by, a family in Osage County. But we built some things on Osage land. We were given or allowed to shoot in about 40 buildings in Pawhuska, which became the main street of our town, representing Fairfax. And those buildings in that block were in pretty bad shape. They were vacant, which was great because we could take them over. The ones that were most solid, we ended up making sets with inside them. We filled in the gaps where buildings had fallen down or burned or, been destroyed by building buildings that reflected the research we had on Fairfax. So we brought as much of Fairfax into Pawhuska, into those 2 blocks as we could. The one building that was in pretty good shape was an old appliance store, and that became our pool hall. But it had a drop ceiling, and we ripped that out. It had paneling on the wall. We took that out, and we had the idea to put a barbershop in the pool hall. So we, tiled parts of the floor, and we opened up, when we took the ceiling out, this, went up about 14 feet, and there were these clear story windows above the picture windows. So it let in so much light. And it was like, when you were in there, you were at a IMAX theater watching the road. And it was great for us because we put so much energy into making the road right, every building and the dirt and the cars and stuff. And from that set, it became a part of the set. So the set, it just expanded to the other side of the road. And it gave you an idea that these people hanging out in the pool hall were just kind of watching, like in a goldfish bowl. They were watching this town go by, and they would see somebody walking. They know how much money he had, or what, how much time he had to live, or how, his sister, or who she was, or, they were right there scheming the whole time. And the pool hall was a perfect place to do it. So that became a featured set.
And it's amazing too. Like, imagine when you're getting these artifacts, for example, let's suppose you get a lamp. You say, okay, it has to be period specific, 1920s, but you mentioned everything begins with character. So do you have to look at a lamp and go, okay, is that the kind of lamp that Ernest Burkhart and Molly would have? Like, how specific are you in those details?
We are specific, because you only have so many chances to tell the viewing audience about the character. So if you are able to find a lamp that Molly would have liked, just by seeing that lamp, you know more about Molly. And if you don't put too many things in the set, you see more stuff. Like as you walk through a room, you might see 3 or 4 things. You won't see 20 things. Your mind can't adjust that, plus watch the movie. So I try to keep the dressing down, and I put importance in, in Adam Willis, who was a set decorator, and I worked closely together. This is our second film together. We chose stuff that primarily that worked for the character, and then worked for the settings to make them, more interesting. It's fun. It's fun thinking about character, and the same thing about color. Lately after COVID, when the newscasters, you start seeing them in their homes talking, and you start seeing the books they were reading. You start seeing the lamps, the pictures. You learn more about them, and it was much more interesting to me. I mean, I love studying character.
Well, I can tell, like, you're somebody who has just such focus on detail. I look at your career is incredible. I mean, the fact you're nominated for the Academy Award Best Production Design for 2 films I adore, particularly P.T. Anderson's There Will Be Blood and The Revenant. So you clearly, Jack, have an affinity or an expertise in period pieces and dealing with this kind of really intense subject matter. I mean, part of why I love Killers of the Flower Moon is I could see the parallels with There Will Be Blood, and it's about capitalism and greed and all of that. And of course, The Revenant's a wonderful movie as well. So maybe speak to your ability to kind of focus on Westerns and be able to really kind of nail those period pieces.
Yeah, and I love working outside. Some designers, their whole career is on a soundstage, and they create stuff on there. But I got started early on Days of Heaven, building that house for Terry out in the plains of Alberta, Canada. And I just loved it. I love being outside. I love dealing with the weather. I like being able to shoot the set from 360 degrees. So you can always put the sun where you like it, that you can go in and out, and you're in the real world. And I think it's, helpful for actors. The more real you can make something, it helps them with their character, and it's helpful for the directors. And then I work with the cinematographers trying to put bigger windows in and orientating the set so we get, a beautiful backlight, and that we have some depth in the vistas, that we're not always having to put up blue screen or paint in the backgrounds, that they're really those wonderful backgrounds. And that's what we found in Oklahoma. There's it's a great American prairie. And it's just not seen enough in films. in Oklahoma is in Pawhuska is the tall grass prairie, which is beautiful, and they've reestablished buffalo on that. And you will go out there, and you don't know what year it is. It could be 1800s, it could be 1900s, or it could be today, but it's timeless. And always in films, I like to not pinpoint a year so much, but to have it timeless, and it has to do with the place and the year that. You might recognize this town as Fairfax, but it might be any town in the United States, at the time. And it could be 1920, but it could be 1915, or it could be 1910. The only thing that gives it away are the automobiles. They're like a clock.
Yeah.
Well, I try to mix them up and put some older ones in there.
You've worked with so many great directors, and I do want to ask you about Terrence Malick. He designed all of his first 8 movies. You've worked with David Lynch. I mentioned P.T. Anderson, Alejandro Gonzalez, and Inarritu. But to work with Scorsese, I think he's America's greatest living director. What was that experience like?
It was really one of the highlights of my experience in working on films. Like I said, when I may have said it, when I first met with Marty, it was over Zoom because COVID was like raging across the country. And then we started a communication through Zoom and letters, emails and letters with photos. And I would send him my ideas, research and stuff as we went. And he was so passionate about the film, about telling the Osage story. And he embraced ideas. If you presented him with a factual reasoning or a logical reasoning, he accepted that. I remember when I first told him about Molly's house, I said it wasn't a mansion; it was a small house. And he thought for a second. He said, "You mean I will never get to see her come down the staircase?" And I know, because Marty references films all the time, it was Gone with the Wind and that great red staircase. But it was sort of sweet, he let it go, and it was more important for him to get everything right. But I think a lot of misconceptions about the Osage came from the press and, urban legends and people retelling stories. But what we tried to do was shift it back to the way it most likely was in the 1920s,
Like you said, it's so collaborative because you're working with Rodrigo Prieto, the cinematographer, you're working with the set decorator, you're working with all these different pieces. And I imagine a little bit with the actors as well. So what kind of interactions did you have with the likes of Leonardo DiCaprio and Robert De Niro and Lily Gladstone?
Well, I worked with Leo on Revenant. So when he first came to Oklahoma, I think he may have been there before, but when he first came under my watch, I took him around to the locations and sets, and I just see, actors, like they get information, they click it into the character. The character's being evolved in their brain, and they lap up any kind of information. So, you want to feed them, research. You want to tell them more about locations, more about other people at that time. And I think that they relied a lot on the Osage input too, for customs. You notice it. I mean, Robert De Niro, I think, spoke fluent Osage by the end of the film. And Leo was rattling off lines in Osage, and I think the teacher that was teaching him all the language said that Lily reminded of her grandmother, the way she talked. So, the actors do so much on themselves, and I think they appreciate, once they trust you, they know what stuff you're putting into the set is real or is thought about through their character. They just absorb it, and it becomes a part of their performance. I mean, that's the ideal thing that I think we do in building a world, is that we build a world that reflects their character and tells us more about their character.
How hands-on are you? Like, if you see carpenters and they're like, putting the table together, not like that. You got to hammer the nail like this. Will you get right in there?
I do get in there. When I was in Oklahoma, although this was one of the bigger films I've worked on, I had a car full of battery operated tools, and I can't help it. One day I went to they were putting up the footings for Hale's house, and it was just going too slow. And so I got in there and just worked with them, and it's exhilarating because I kind of approach building these worlds like sculpture, and you don't want to just sit back and watch. You want to become a part of it. From some of the old days of let's put on a show with Mickey Rooney and Judy Garland. You want to get in there and build something. I remember the first film I did with Terrence Malick, Badlands. Martin Sheen was picking up cable and carrying it to the next set, and lights. My favorite way to work is in everybody meets and they're making a film, and there's no division of you can do this and you can do that. So I'm continually getting in trouble for crossing the line. But I enjoy it so much that I don't care.
No, I love it. Speaking
I worked with Daniel Lupe on The Master, and we were going to shoot in Hawaii. And I remember as I was going to the plane, he called and he said, "Look, I've hired somebody in every department, so you can do whatever you want." They can't, because that's when the unions get upset, is if you're doing something and putting someone out of work. But he said, I've arranged it. You can do whatever you want.
All right, time for last one again. Legendary career, all those movies with. I know they just told me one more. I could go for Jack another hour. Badlands, Days of Heaven, The Thin Red Line, The Tree of Life. But I do have to ask, because you mentioned The Master and There Will Be Blood. I've just got to ask, can you give me your best Daniel Day-Lewis story? Because I need something of him as Daniel Plainview, whatever you got, or P.T. Anderson, something on that set, because I just adore that movie. Just the John Huston accent, whatever you got.
Oh my goodness. Well, Daniel Day-Lewis, important for him is the clothing, finding the hat for Plainview and all that stuff. And he asked us if we could build, they had rented a little house for him. He said, "Can you build a room in the backyard with all the furnishings from the period?" I mean, so he could go in that room and get lost in the period.
Wow.
And he said that when he was working on Gangs of New York, it was so alarming to him because he'd be shooting in the back lot in Rome at Cinecittà, and he would go outside and he'd be in Rome, but he wanted to be in New York in 1900 New York, and it blew his mind. So he takes what I love to the extreme. He wants to get lost in that period. Yeah. And every piece of clothing, every notch on his belt, everything is like informs his character, and that's why he's so great.
Yeah, and talking to you, I just keep thinking the expression, the devil's in the details, and it's in those details that you get greatness and masterpieces that you've worked on, like There Will Be Blood and this latest one, Killers of the Flower Moon. Jack Fisk, production designer. Jack, I can't thank you enough. This is a real honor.
I love talking to you, and I'm glad you like the film.
But we talked to Jack Fisk, the production designer. Now it's to bring in the casting director, Ellen Lewis of Killers of the Flower Moon. It's nothing short of the best picture of the year. And Ellen is somebody who is so critical to Martin Scorsese's success. If you look at her resume, Goodfellas, Casino, The Departed, Wolf of Wall Street, The Irishman, in addition to many other great films along the years, you can imagine the impact she has had on his movies. And what a pleasure bringing Ellen right now. Ellen, congrats. Great to see you. What a wonderful achievement.
Thank you so much. I'm so pleased to be here. Thank you, Adnan. Thank you.
So this film took a while, Ellen. Marty is writing the script with Eric Roth, and of course, Leo is going to play the FBI agent. They go, no, we don't want to tell him the white savior tale. Let's reshape this. Leo calls David Gran, who I just had on the podcast. David goes, what do you think about Planet Ernest? Okay, sounds good. Let's reshape the entire thing. And all I kept thinking is, imagine Ellen Lewis going, all right, we're going to start shooting here. Let's start casting here. No, wait, actually, we're going to scrap this for 2 years, and we've got COVID. So take me through it. When did you start casting the picture?
I started casting. I started working on it in 2018. I contacted Renee Haynes, who I had met on Godless, a Netflix limited series I had done that Scott Frank directed, and she had done the Indigenous casting in that. So I knew I had already read David Grant's book, thought it was amazing. So I knew that I needed good support in that part of the casting. Renee started getting me films made by Indigenous filmmakers or starring Indigenous actors that I had never seen before. And we then, so that's as early as 2018, but in 2019, with already our production had developed a strong relationship with the Osage Nation. Renee, as well as our production, set up an open call, meaning that you put out flyers and then anybody who's interested can attend. And we did this prior to Thanksgiving, 2019. We did 3 days in Pawhuska, 2 days in Oklahoma City, and 2 days in Tulsa. There was a total of 2,500 Indigenous actors, or humans, actually, not necessarily actors, who came. And from that, Renee was walking the crowd and looking at faces and looking at people and anyone that she thought could be right for us. She sent to another room and they were given a small scene. And then I was in another room with my associate, Kate Sprance, and her associate, Elise. And we read people, and we read people all throughout those days. It was very wonderful to be in the community. The turnout was so incredible, and people were so enthusiastic and patient because it was a lot of people to consider and be seen. And from that, most of those faces you see up on the screen.
And Lily Gladstone is such a revelation in the movie. I imagine, Bob and Leo and, principal actors, obviously they're going to be cast and Marty's taking care of that. But someone like Lily Gladstone, I believe you discovered her. How did you do it?
I didn't discover, Lily's been acting. Renee, again, was giving me films to look at with different actresses. And she brought up Lily. And I had seen A Certain Woman, the Kelly Reichardt film. And I knew that Marty was a big Kelly Reichardt fan. And when I had seen the film and I watched it again, and, you don't want to feel too confident, but because we were right in the beginning of seeing people, but I felt confident enough that late 2019, Marty said, Molly, we really have to. And I said, I think we're going to be okay. And we were. And so obviously we went through a process with that. And then we Zoom read with Marty, with Lily, and then we Zoom read with Leo, with Lily. And there we have, a magnificent actress who adds such depth and heart and soul and stillness and love to this very tragic story.
Yeah, I've been telling people, I said, you walk out of there and DiCaprio's arguably never been better. And I hope De Niro gets a late career Oscar because he's deserving. But Lily Gladstone feels like a revelation. Like she's just so expressive in the role. And she really is like the heart and soul of the movie. Like those eyes and that pain, that anguish. It's remarkable. And it goes to your point just about the authenticity. Like how many roles did you have to end up casting?
In the film overall? At a certain point, I stopped counting because I've done, as you said, I've done a lot of movies for Marty, and a lot of them have a lot of roles. The Irishman was a huge cast too. But I think that what's interesting about this, I think Renee Haynes, because she did a count, she had, I think there are 42 Indigenous roles in the film, and only 14 of the actors who are in the film had ever acted before. So, although that open call was vital, and had that not happened before the pandemic, it's so fortuitous that happened before the pandemic, because we would not have been able to see the community in that way.
And I always wonder, I have friends who are actors, and it's funny, they try to befriend the casting director. I could just imagine the amount of people you've seen. Ellen, please, I'll do anything for Scorsese's, my hero, whatever I can do. What is it like when you're casting? Do you ever develop I wouldn't say a soft spot for an actor, but go, you know what? I really think they're right for this. And then maybe the audition doesn't go well. Would you ever go to Marty and go, listen, give him or her another audition, or go look at this work that they've done, bring them back another time? Or would you not get that involved?
I think that, first of all, every film that I do, no matter who the director is, it's another world that you're creating. And obviously, in this world was very specific. We were given fantastic historical film to look at. We had footage from the Rotary Club, and we had home movies of the Osage. So what you're trying to do, obviously, is it's so vital who the actors are, who the faces are. And we are the first people really on a film. Maybe locations is on, but casting is so vital.
Yeah.
And I start just to try to see the world through his eyes. And it's very difficult to be an actor. It's a career that is filled with rejection. And, only one person is going to get the role. So I just try to make that audition process as kind of warm and welcoming as possible. If I really believe in someone and I feel that they didn't do the right reading, I'll read them again. And, but Marty also, when we do read with people together, he's very sensitive to the actor. And, he really understands actors probably better than anybody. And it's just a joy to bring somebody to him. And of course, people are going to be nervous, but I've talked to them and I've explained to them what the process will be and how great he is. And, I try to make it as comfortable as I can for the actors.
I can tell you have like a nice instinct to you that you could tell if someone's hyperventilating. You go, it's okay. Take a deep breath. He's just another guy. He's just Marty. It's okay.
And I'm excited too. I let them know. It's like, I'm excited every time too. And a little nervous. So, you're more nervous, but you should just know I'm really excited and he's really excited to meet you. So
how does he punctuate things when he's really excited about them?
We just know. He just knows when it's right. He's extremely decisive. I have gone through, my process is to open the door very wide, and then I really narrow down the choices, which is how I was taught the casting process from Julia Taylor, from Marion Dougherty to Julia Taylor, that is how we do our job. I try not to overwhelm the director. And yet, obviously, it is about what is their vision. And overall, we've done pretty well over these many years.
Yeah, I did more than pretty well. The batting average is high. Are you on set, Ellen, during the filming of the movie?
Never. I never go to the set. I don't like going to the set. I like that doesn't mean that always, sometimes when these casts are very large, I might have to see Marty a little bit through production, but generally I'll FaceTime or Zoom with him. But for the most part, I feel that it's very important that casting be finished by the time he is shooting, so that this is not something he needs to be thinking about. Mm-hmm. His cast is taken care of, and then he is very aware of the fact that I am paying attention through all of the shooting. I'm in constant touch with our AD department and our producer because dates can shift. And so I'm just really keeping up on things so that the cast is flowing smoothly. But I don't like the set. So I really love what I do in my pre-production one-on-one time with the actors and then with the director.
We're talking with Alan Lewis, legendary casting director, Killers of the Flower Moon. You've all got to go see it. It's my favorite movie of the year so far. Alan, how well do other casting directors know each other? Do you ever say to someone, you go, I'm trying to cast this, and you go, you know what? I've got the perfect actor for you. Call this guy.
As I said, my first thought on reading Killers of the Flower Moon was to call Renee Haynes,
right,
who specializes in Indigenous casting. This is what she has done throughout her career. And then she and I are collaborating. So many of my closest friends are casting directors. Jeannie McCarthy, Vicki Thomas, Ellen Chenoweth, Juliet Taylor, my mentor, still one of my dearest friends, Laura Rosenthal. And I think one of the reasons is because I think that casting actually, I think people don't really understand what our job is. And I think many times people think, oh, I can think of actors. And so they think that kind of that's what the job is. But we all obviously know that we do know what the job is and how challenging it can be. And so we're a very supportive community. I feel really proud to be part of the casting community.
It really is an extraordinary community, as you said. The one question I always have is, how is there no Oscar for casting directors? It's such a vital process. Marty himself has said, this. He said 90% of movies is the casting. How can you not get an Oscar for casting?
Adnan, I don't know what to tell you. I mean, to say that it's wrong is an understatement. Our craft is equally as important as every craft that gets nominated. I understand, the writer, the cinematographer, the editor. I just don't understand, makeup, hair, costumes, sound. It's a terrible oversight, I feel, and hopefully they will correct this at some point.
I mean, we have so many different categories, and there's so many worthy of recognition. It's honestly astonishing to me that a casting director can't also be mentioned.
All those crafts deserve an Oscar, but absolutely casting deserves an Oscar.
There's one actor I wanted to focus on just because I rewatched The Irishman for the fourth time. I saw it 3 times in theaters. I saw it at the New York Film Festival when Marty was there, De Niro, Pesci, Pacino. Then I watched it the next day. I took my wife, and then I saw it again in theaters. And then I had to rewatch it a couple of weeks ago. And I said, the guy I've got to ask you about once you're able to kindly come through and give us a few minutes, because I saw him in Killers of the Flower Moon. I said, oh my God, I love this guy. And it's the guy who plays Sally Bugs. Louis Can't Sell Me.
It's Louis.
Yeah, tell me about Louis. This guy's great.
I know. I had not been as familiar with Louis's work prior to when he came in and auditioned for The Irishman. And the minute that he read, I remember that I had to rush out to an appointment. And I'm like, you are amazing. I am so, so happy to meet you and to hear this reading. And, I know we will be crossing paths again soon. And that I think that Louis is a brilliant, brilliant actor. And I think to show how he goes from The Irishman fluidly into Killers of the Flower Moon and this period, I think he is chilling. He gives chilling performances, actually, in both films. I mean, they are... he's the warmest guy in the world. So, but he does seem to play a kind of a renegade kind of fellow in both of the films.
That whole scene in The Irishman where he's talking about the fish prior to Jimmy being executed is incredibly well done.
It is. And it's so funny and horrible as they're going to shoot Jimmy Hoffa that this is the conversation that's going on in the car and how funny it is. But, I'm also so proud that Jesse Plemons as Tom White is in the film. Mm-hmm. I think he is an actor. He is as pure an actor as I can imagine. I don't think he hits a false note. There's nothing that he does or says ever that I don't believe. And so I'm so proud that also that Jesse is in the film. But I'm glad that you're bringing up Louis, because I thought about it last night at the LA premiere. It's just like, Louis is so brilliant. He's so funny and horrifying and horrible all at the same time. And that's the perfect kind of actor for Marty, which is a very dangerous but funny actor.
Yeah, I was like, but now that face is so unique and just his sensibility. And you're right. I was like, I could see him in any role. And I bet the fact you told me he's such a warm guy is so funny to me. I'm like, I could totally see that. I want to go back to Goodfellas, if I may, because the other day somebody had this terrible hair and someone goes, I look like Maury. And of course, the reference, Maury's wigs never come off, which is actor Chuck Lowe.
Chuck Lowe.
Of that entire cast, like, again, it's remarkable. There's De Niro and the now late Ray Liotta and Joe Pesci, et cetera. But like, tell me about Chuck Lowe, because he's unforgettable as Maury.
Well, Chuck Lowe, I think, was Bob De Niro's landlord. I mean, Chuck Lowe, when you do movies that Joe Pesci or Robert De Niro or Al Pacino are in, they know a lot of people.
Right.
And so it's always kind of fascinating who they want you to meet and who those people are and what they do. On both sides of the law, you never quite know where they're coming from. Did they train at the Actors Studio? Very possibly. Were they the landlord in, down in Tribeca? Very possibly. So that's Chuck Lowe's.
You mentioned De Niro. Of course, you worked with him, Goodfellas, Casino, The Irishman, and now this one. I saw there was a great piece on CBS this morning, and when DiCaprio was discussing, he says, Marty's got a real shorthand with Bob, right? He goes, he kind of looks at him, kind of crinkles his nose, kind of looks like, yeah. And then they ask Marty, what's your relationship with Leo? He goes, longhand. And he gives that great Marty laugh. And then Leo's like, oh, long conversations, long things. Give me a story first about De Niro. Does he also have that shorthand with you? Kind of gives you a look like, Ellen, I like this actor, I don't like him. Does he do the same thing?
The way that I'm working for the most part is still very directly with Marty.
Right.
So I am, of course, I think Bob's performance I think Bob obviously is one of the greatest living actors throughout the history of film. I think that Killers of the Flower Moon is one of his greatest performances ever. Mm-hmm. But I'm really, my dialogue is with Marty. So, I respect every single thing about Robert De Niro, and I'm always happy to meet anyone that he wants me to meet. But I have to say that the longhand and the shorthand comment really made me laugh too.
Because you could totally see it, right? Like it's like when someone said, "Oh, De Niro's who recommended DiCaprio to Marty." They go, "What do you say?" Marty goes, "Well, Bob doesn't talk much. He just said Leo's pretty good. You should work with him one day." That's it.
No, I mean, I have to say that I have a shorthand with Marty too. So it just, it resonated. The statement resonated with me, and I just think that anyone who is able to work in any capacity with Martin Scorsese is truly blessed, because he's so inspiring. He's so enthusiastic. So from casting Goodfellas to casting Killers of the Flower Moon, his enthusiasm about every project, it's as if we're doing this for the first time.
Yeah.
And which is how I approach my job, as if I'm doing this for the first time. We might have some familiar faces, of course. There are people that I know that Marty really responds to and wants to work with, but then it's just thrilling to get to meet new people. And something else I want to say, because I'm just struck by it so much. You read a script. I work on the movie in the beginning of the film, but there's no way that I can ever imagine what it is that he is going to create in the cinematic language that he alone speaks. Yeah. And I find it overwhelming and moving every time.
Couple more here, then we'll let her go. I always think just the casting of, again, so-called minor characters. There's no minor characters, but Goodfellas, like that great sequence, Jimmy Two Times going to go get the papers. How do you cast that guy? Who's the guy in Casino in the Vice? There must be so many different roles these people are so critical to saying. Like even think about it, a guy in a Vice, but when Joe Pesci's they go Charlie T, because of Charlie T, like that actor is going to be critical. That's a memorable scene.
Yeah, I actually have to say, and this could come more from my training when I worked for Juliet Taylor for 8.5 years. She would be kind of more concentrated on the leads.
Right.
I love casting the day players. I love casting the smallest roles. I think that this is what gives texture and depth to a movie, are those faces, are the believability of those small roles. I love in the beginning of Killers, the man who's selling the car, the man who's taking the photographs. I mean, I love casting those roles. And then, what you have to be careful of are the faces. So you want to make sure that, the faces have a kind of a different feeling and that people are going to be able to differentiate. But I love that you're bringing up, I do love, I was in Las Vegas for about 3 months casting Casino, and, kind of word went out that we were there and people were just filing through. The man who throws up the chips when Sharon Stone in the opening of
the mustache and the glasses. Yeah.
The man worked in a mall. And those were his clothes and his glasses. I remember saying to wardrobe, I don't think you're going to have to do anything with this guy. I think he's ready to go.
All right, one more for you. The guy I absolutely love, and I had him on this podcast. I was with a friend of mine who's a terrific actor. And we're watching. I go, I love the scene in The Irishman with Pacino and Stephen Graham and De Niro, and Stephen Graham is late, and they get into it. I go, the guy I love is that guy, Patrick Gallo. I go, that guy's fantastic. My buddy goes, right. I'm going to go to IMDb. I'm going to go and talk to information. You're going to have him on the podcast. So sure enough, I hit him up, I had him on. Ellen, he was so amazing because I said, I just want to, you're with Pacino and De Niro and Stephen Graham, and you're and I'm with you. I find it fascinating. Who's the fourth guy? How is he handling the role? And he was like, you don't understand. I'm pinching myself. And Bob and Al both couldn't be more gracious. We do take after take. Marty's so generous. Marty treats me the same way he treats them. I swear to God, if I have an idea, if I have a thought, let's go for it. If I have an ad lib, it's great. He goes, that's the kindest compliment I can make, is that they really treat you as an equal, which is extraordinary to me. Right. No, I think that the collaboration is, on everybody's part. And it sounds like on the set, I know Marty talks to his actors, listens to his actors. And look, I think that there can be times where it can be intimidating. I've had this happen a couple of times on a film. And it is intimidating, and an actor can freeze. But I think that Marty's the kind of guy, and I think if you're in a scene with Bob De Niro, he wants you to be comfortable. And, all of those actors, Al's an actor's actor. Stephen Graham is a brilliant actor that we cast in Gangs of New York, and obviously then cast in Boardwalk Empire and in The Irishman. So, and he's just the warmest, greatest guy who can play a pretty scary character. But it's interesting. I love that you pay attention to those small roles, because that is what I really love doing. This was such an education. Ellen Lewis, the outstanding casting director, Goodfellas, Casino, The Departed, Wolf of Wall Street, The Irishman, many, many more. I just wanted to focus, obviously, on these Scorsese movies, and Killers of the Flower Moon, which is coming out. You got to go see it. It's amazing. Ellen, this was, like I said, such an education, such a pleasure, and I'll give a kidney just to do a read-through in a Scorsese movie, whatever you need. Adnan, look, I might want to try it at some point. So, you never know. You could get that call. You're the best. Thanks so much, Ellen. Thanks. Bye. All right. Take care. All right. Killers of the Flower Moon. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you all go see the movie. I hope it's a roaring success for Apple and all those kind of people. I'm so lucky I got to be able to watch the film. I'm lucky to have CINEPHILE, lucky to have Chris Cody with me, and the entire team here at CINEPHILE. Again, go to Apple Podcasts, subscribe, rate, and review. Thanks once again to Jack Fisk, the production designer, and Ellen Lewis, the casting director. Killers of the Flower Moon. Whew. I'll take a deep breath. I hope you all see it once. I'm going to go see it a second time, and I'll see you at the movies.